One point I will make, I made this mistake my first year out. From here to Colorado for me is like 22 hours of straight driving. We drove out in my truck, which wasn't no big deal. Tag team driving, someone slept in the back. That was fine. When we got there, we slept at just a pull up campsite. There was nothing there. We slept in the back of the truck, and then the next morning drove up into the mountain and then hiked up to 11,000 feet and tried to hunt. And honestly, it was too much at one time. With all the new stuff that I was trying to experience and learn for the first time, going into it already a little bit mentally and physically exhausted from the travel was not a good plan. And I think, if you're going out with buddies, finding a $50 to $100 hotel room and splitting it and getting a good night's sleep and getting a nice warm shower and kind of getting a good meal and hitting a bit of a reset before you start taxing yourself mentally and physically, probably harder than or harder or close to you ever have before. It's a really good idea to kind of try to hit that reset and try to start fresh. So I highly recommend building that into your plan and your schedule. And to that as well, getting in shape. I mean, this isn't specific to travel. If you're in shape, you're going to be a better hunter. You're not going to be as miserable, so you're not going to break down mentally as fast. You're not going to break down physically as fast, and you're just going to be able, to get that next ridge or to climb to that next peak or whatever it might be. But just all around, being in shape and training ahead of time, and specifically, especially if you're doing a backcountry style hunt, not just going out and running and getting in good cardio shape, but understanding what it's like to carry a pack, that might be 30, 40, 50 pounds on your back day in and day out at a high elevation, up and down mountains. It's different than just running. So I highly recommend training with a pack, hiking with a pack, and getting used to carrying that weight. It'll make you sore in places that just running isn't going to do. So I touched lightly on pretty much all of my topics. The last thing that I had here was just something that I always have to remind myself is to understand that after all the time, all the research, all the effort, all the money, after all that, it's still hunting and nothing's guaranteed. And I don't care if you're with a guide or whatever, nothing's guaranteed. So you can't think just because you dropped all this money and you did all this effort, you still got to have realistic expectations. And going home empty-handed is what happens the majority of the time to the majority of people. And you got to understand that it's still hunting. So don't get discouraged. Personally, I try to, I love just going out, seeing new places, experiencing new things. So just successfully harvesting an animal on a hunt doesn't need to mean that was a successful hunt. You can find other ways to find that a successful hunt. Just taking on an endeavor like that, personally, I think is a success in itself. So I'll just say, your body will keep going as long as your mind will let it. Your mind's always gonna give up first, at least I think definitely my experience and in most people's experience. So you got to keep that positive mental attitude, and you just got to keep going. And so don't get hung up if you're, if it doesn't all come together, don't worry about it, and don't give up, keep going. So those are all the hot topics that I had down. I can start fielding some more questions if you guys have them. And I mean, I don't care how specific they are. If you got questions, fire away.
I guess so. I haven't done anything like, Western, obviously. As far as I've gone, it's Kentucky.
Yep.
where would you recommend maybe a first state to try and get started? I know you said you started in Colorado, but it's really condensed. So, maybe you had another opinion on where I should get started, taking in mind how far of a drive I got to do and everything like
Right.
that.
Well, are you talking whitetail specific or
No,
different?
let's say maybe mule deer, elk. And
Um,
obviously whitetail could always happen if they have them, but
yeah, the Nebraskas are really good, and the Dakotas, or Nebraska and the Dakotas, are really great places that you can do mule deer or whitetail either. That might be a little closer to you. I don't know, actually. Maybe it's not. Really, you'd have to travel. Colorado is just really great because it gives a lot of opportunity to out-of-state hunters, whereas some other Western states make it a little tougher for out-of-staters.
yeah, man, yeah, I'm gonna have to look into, I guess, all the driving lengths for South Dakota. You said South Dakota, North Dakota.
Yeah.
Okay. What about like Idaho?
Idaho, I think Idaho's a pretty good state too. You can do a lot of like early season rifle hunting in Idaho. I think they have seasons for elk when they're still bugling with a rifle. I know what kept me away from Idaho was it was a little further, and the wolf population is out of control there. So I'm not, I'm no expert on any of that, but I don't think well, at least it was my perception that I would have better odds in Colorado than Idaho, which is why I chose it.
Okay.
But if what's nice about like Dakotas or Nebraska, and some of those states that are not real, too far west, or kind of more Midwest, is you can get like a general deer tag where you could shoot whitetail or mule deer.
Okay, yeah, that sounds like something.
Yeah, and they're a little more affordable in most cases than elk tag or mule deer tag out west. I mean, I don't know. I think it's like $700 or something like that for a bull elk in Colorado, and maybe you're at 400 or 500 for a mule deer. And I'll be honest, I don't know like Nebraska or Dakota's prices, but I would put money on it that it's cheaper than that. And I think you can get a couple, like I think in Nebraska at least, you can get a couple of deer on one license. Like they might give you 2 or 3 on a general tag or something like that. But you can look into it.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to do that.
Yeah.
Here's another question: be if you could go anywhere, where would it be? Like, what's your dream spot?
Oh,
State, maybe even. You don't have to be that specific.
Yeah, I mean, I've always wanted to hunt elk around the Grand Canyon area in Arizona. It's just trophy elk hunting. It's not real tough terrain, so that's kind of my dream, and that's what I'm working towards as my long-term plan. But honestly, if I could go anywhere, it'd be Alaska. I think that's probably on top of most people's bucket list.
Yeah, definitely.
Torn says 265 for Nebraska. Is that just, what is that, Torn? Is that like one deer, or you get a couple on that, or what? 2 deer. Yeah, I thought you get a couple. And that's either, right? Mule deer or whitetail for either of those.
Yeah, that sounds like a pretty good deal, man.
Yeah, I'm telling you, Nebraska and the Dakotas are a good middle ground. Actually, Torn and I were talking earlier this year, or maybe it was even last year, I can't remember now, about those states. They're definitely on my bucket list. And what's cool about them too, even glassing hunting whitetail out there, like it's such big country, right? So, on the East Coast, there's, you got the mountains, you can't see real far. What's pretty neat about those states is you can sit back and kind of glass and do a more Western style hunt for whitetail.
Yeah. Is there like, I'm gonna miss this. Did you go over like optics to like?
Oh yeah, that's a good point. Optics are definitely key out west. You're doing a lot. I mean, a lot of your days are spent glassing. a lot of people will tell you need a spotting scope, and I think it really is dependent on the country that you're going to be hunting. You can cover more ground with your binoculars for sure. Generally people are using the spotting scopes to get they find things with their binoculars, and then they pull out the spotting scope to get a better look at that animal, to figure out whether he's trophy caliber or legal or whatever. Personally, in Colorado, where I've gone hunting thus far, there's a lot of timber. I don't use the spotting scope because I use 10x50 binoculars, and they do great. I like Vortex. A lot of people make good glass. Vortex's warranty is tough to beat. But yeah, I think a good set of binoculars is a must. Anytime you're going to somewhere, that has that expansive country where you're going to be sitting and glassing up animals. And don't spend an extra $100 or $200. You're not going to regret it. I can guarantee that. Especially on something, if you get Vortex, they have a lifetime warranty. So that'd be the last set of binoculars you ever need.
Yeah, the 10x42 right now.
I used to run 10x40s for whitetail. And actually they broke right before the first time I went out west, and I just kind of panicked, and I bought these 10x50s, and I'll never go back. It just gives you a bigger field of view, same magnification, but
check them out.
I've never gone antelope hunting. No. I honestly have never been that intrigued by antelope. And maybe I'm huge into eating everything I have, and every time I've had antelope, it has a very strong sage taste to it. So I don't enjoy it as much as other animals, and I love elk meat. So that was where my motivation was for the species that I chose. Torn brought up about keeping a bow safe from damage or knocking anything loose during travel or while out hunting. Off from Colin. Okay. Yeah, if you're flying, you have to, I think whether you have a bow or a gun, it has to be in a locked case to fly with it. I've taken rifles thus far. So my first archery trip will be next year, but I definitely keep things in a case when I'm traveling regardless. In terms of when you're out in the field, something to cover your barrel with is a great idea. And that's something else. You don't want to take a rifle that you're afraid to scratch up, because that rifle is going to be put through some abuse, and your bow as well. So, that's kind of part of the game. You try to take care of it as best as you can, just like we do anywhere we're hunting, but understand that, like you're sleeping in the tent, that gun's there with you. I usually kept mine in my vestibule. Keeping a good scope cover is key, and keeping a barrel cover, I think, is key. You can use balloons. I've used those before. You can use just tape. You can shoot right through it. I think you can even buy some covers and stuff, different places that you can put over your barrel, as well as like a scope and full barrel cover and stuff like that. That's one thing that's, unless you're just specifically set up there, waiting on something to come out, you're usually glassing long range. Western hunting, for me at least, it seems like things happen a little bit slower than they do where, you're in a tree stand or something, and you always got to be ready for that split second for something to come by. When you're out glassing stuff up, you have time to take off the cover or whatever and get set up and shoot. So. Terrell says the Matthews hat has him thinking about public land antelope hunts. Yeah, you can apply, and well, let me cover that too. A a lot of states nowadays are switching to, you have to buy a license to apply for the draw. And so you buy it up front license. It's usually 75 to $100. Arizona is like 140, maybe something like that. It's kind of expensive, and that's a non-refundable fee. You buy your license, and then you can usually apply for a draw once you have that license for 10 or 15 bucks. So to get your money's worth, it makes sense that if you're going to build points in one state, you buy that license and you apply for as many species, or you build points for as many species as you want to hunt long term, because you're going to get the most bang for your buck that way. The big upfront cost is buying that license. Applying for the draw is usually, like I said, much cheaper. So, and it's typically you buy the license, you can apply for whatever, So, if you do want to hunt antelope sometime, or you do want to hunt elk and mule deer or whatever, I would to save money and utilize your the license that you're buying, I would tell you to go ahead and apply for all the species that you want at that point, or that you can afford. A bear hunt in Maine in September. Any quick tips? Maine in September. Colin might have tips. He's in Vermont. No, I don't have quick tips for Maine in September. I do hunt bear here in West Virginia, but I typically just hunt them while I'm hunting deer. I don't typically go out for a special hunt just for bear. Mosquito repellent, yeah.
So
Permethrin and permethrin's amazing, but 40% deep. I think that's the highest you can get.
All right. Is there anything else we want to cover? We're working on an hour here. Anybody got any last minute questions, or Eric, you want to cover anything here at the end, other than if potentially anybody has any questions, how they can get in touch with you and bounce some ideas off of you?
Yeah, I mean, I covered, I think, most of my bullet points that I had. I can definitely deep dive into some other topics that are more specific, or the more specifics about those topics, I should say, if anybody's interested in it. I'm in all the server-side groups on Facebook. It's E Spiroff, as you guys see my name here. It's first initial, last name, 31 on Instagram. Shoot me a message, Facebook, Instagram, whatever. I can get back to you.
Thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, no problem. Did Zach really write that to you?
Yeah, he did.
Tell him he can't get none of my tips for Illinois in November. He'll have to see them firsthand.
All right. Well, I just want to thank everybody for hopping on. Like I said, we're going to have more webinars. We usually host them every Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern. I think the next one coming up is going to be on arrow building. So if you're not a server-side member, check out our website. We have more modules that are being built currently and more educational content. So it's serviceside.com. And like I said, I appreciate everybody for hopping on. And thanks again, Eric.
Yep. Thank you guys. Appreciate it.